Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today we have a batch of 5 new tier 2 characters with some balance changes coming up for you guys that are going to drop about, within 24 hours of when this video updates. So you might be watching it before or after the update depending on what time zone you're in. But let's jump right into what we're going to get, who's getting buffs, who's getting their tier 2 guys, because the list is quite important and quite relevant, especially for upcoming Netflix series, to tease that a little bit. So first we are getting Power Man, Luke Cage, Chocolate Thunder. He is getting his tier 2 finally. Now what is he getting? Well, he's going to be getting an apply to self. This is a passive effect. This doesn't need to be triggered or anything like that. It's going to reduce all incoming damage by 30%, which is fantastic. That's a big number. And then it's going to also give him the ability, or the passive effect, to reflect 100% of received physical damage up to a maximum attack of 150%. That's really, really important. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but the last part is that it enhances, and it's vague right now. We don't know exactly what enhances means, but it's going to enhance the effect of his 4-star passive Unbreakable, which gives him a heal triggered when he gets hit. So that's really good. The cooldown is really bad at 60 seconds, but that 10% with a 25% chance when hit will probably bump up to maybe 15 or 20% with maybe a 40 or a 50% chance when hit, which could be really nice for the character. The physical reflect I find to be very interesting, not because there are a lot of characters who are meta and who deal physical damage. There actually are very, very few. Most of the meta characters right now deal energy damage. But it is interesting because we've never seen physical damage reflect before in a playable character, I don't think. And also those numbers, really remind me of Destroyer. And if you guys don't know, Destroyer is still a pretty formidable opponent, especially in PvP and player versus player, because of the fact that he can, disrupt heroes, and he can really punish you for bringing in a heavy hitter as far as energy damage goes. So it immediately makes Luke Cage a formidable opponent against very heavy physical damage dealing characters like Thanos, like Black Dwarf, like Carnage tier 2, Moon Knight tier 2. All of these guys, especially in PvP, are going to have to be careful and look out for tier 2 Luke Cage, because he could literally one-shot you with reflect damage. It does make the character a lot more relevant, especially if his Shadowlands counterpart gets those updates. So I am interested to see if those will be reflected, no pun intended, in Shadowlands. But it is a pretty overall great tier 2 for Power Man, for an excellent character. Next up, we have his counterpart, Power Woman, and I'm not so happy about that Power Man, Power Woman thing, whatever. But, they have a baby in the comics, as I've been told, so I guess we can go with the kind of, husband and wife motif. What is Jessica Jones getting? She's getting a really paltry 8% all speed buff, so all speed means attack speed and movement speed. She's getting 20% increase to skill damage, 20% increase to bonus damage, yada, 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 fucking boring. And then she's getting a 70% reflect of received physical damage up to a maximum of 100. So she's basically getting the baby version of Luke Cage's, except instead of getting the buff to the 4-star passive, because her 4-star passive just doesn't have a buff, it's just an immunity. And then she's gonna get a bit of a bump in her damage instead of the heal, and instead of the all damage received reduced. Now the 30% all damage received reduced is actually insane. I didn't talk about that enough for Luke Cage, but that's exactly what Odin has. So to give Luke Cage with his tier 2 passive the same thing as Odin's Decree is actually nuts, and it's going to bump Luke Cage's survivability massively. And I really think that they should have given that to Jessica Jones instead, because she needs more love than Luke Cage does. Luke Cage is still a serviceable character right now, whereas Jessica Jones is nigh unplayable. So I don't really understand why it is that they chose to make her basically the shittier version of Luke Cage when she's already in that place. They could have done a lot more for her, and I'm honestly disappointed with her tier 2, but she's got a little bit coming up for her in addition to that, so I'll leave my final comments for that. The third character that is getting their tier 2 treatment is finally going to be Kingpin. DJ Khaled, the fat man himself, the roles, is finally getting his tier 2, and it's basically what we've been all expecting. He's going to be getting a huge bump to the skills and to the power level of his summons, Criminal Mastermind. So what are they getting? They're going to get a 10% increase to attack and defense, 25% increase to the summons HP, and a 10% increase to their duration. Right now with maximum skill cooldown, you can have the clones almost perfectly rotate with the 20-second cooldown if you get that down to 10 seconds. So as you can see there, it's 10 and 10. There's a slight delay between when they disappear and when you can summon them again, because Kingpin has to like point at the enemy with the animation. So I think this is going to make it so that you can fluidly summon them and cycle through them without the enemy or the boss losing aggro on the summons and attacking Kingpin. So that is going to boost his survivability considerably. As well, he's getting all damage received reduced by 20% for Kingpin himself, and a 25% increase to skill damage and a 25% increase to bonus damage. I don't really understand how Kingpin gets this good of a summon and, you know, hero related tier 2, and then Jessica Jones gets the one that she did. Kingpin's is far and away better than Jessica Jones's, and I honestly just don't understand why. Kingpin is a farmable character, Jessica Jones isn't. Kingpin doesn't have a Netflix series, Jessica Jones does. I really don't see why there's so much love being sold to this bald, fat version of Mr. Clean when Jessica Jones, charming as she might be, isn't getting any love. I'm a little perplexed by it, but Kingpin is getting a very good tier 2. Next up, we have Dr. Octopus. Now, the update will say that there may be 6 characters getting their tier 2s. It's actually 5, but both Dr. Octopus and Dr. Octopus with the Superior Spider-Man uniform are getting slightly different tier 2s. I don't think it matters too much, and I don't think anyone is going to use Dr. Octopus without his uniform anymore, and I don't think that this tier 2 difference actually does anything to encourage you to not use his uniform. But let's check out what we're getting for both the Fat Green Man and the Skinny Red Man. So the Fat Green Man is getting a 25% increase to skill damage and a 25% increase to bonus damage. He's also getting a 30% dodge ignore, which is like whatever, that's only useful for Shadowlands these days. And then he's getting a bump in the he's getting an enhancement in the mutagenic growth 4th skill or 4th star passive skill. So it gives 5% physical attack right now. It's probably going to jump to like 10 or 15, whoop-de-doo, no big deal. So the Fat Man in the green suit is really not getting much of anything. I guess the dodge ignore fits thematically because Dr. Octopus fights Spider-Man and other spiders from the Spider-Verse, and they mostly have guaranteed dodge, so it fits. But it's just a terrible tier 2 passive in general. I know he's getting reworks as well for the base character, so we will touch on that in just a little bit. But I am disappointed that they didn't do more to make this version of Dr. Octopus actually playable. On the other hand, because I do have to compare these two tier 2s to the Green Goblin tier 2s. If you guys don't know from my last video when we did cover the tier 2s for Green Goblin, he does have distinct tier 2s for both his classic and his ultimate uniform. And I think that thematically and in terms of the power level, they really tried hard to make them both fit. And even though the ultimate uniform kind of sucks as far as DPS goes, damage, they did try to balance that out with the classic uniform and give them different strengths and weaknesses as far as their tier 2s go. In this case with Dr. Octopus, I feel like they did not go that route. And even basically, besides the fact that the uniformed version is already better, you know, just period, they've made the tier 2 version for the uniform for the Superior Spider-Man better as well. So I just really don't understand the rationale there, but let's get into what Superior Spider-Man Doc Ock in Spider-Man's body is getting. He's getting a 2-second increase to the duration time of all of his web skills, which is really important because he's actually upgrading from 1 web skill, Final Embrace, to 2 web skills. So now he'll have 2 CC skills that each have a 2-second increase to their already, I believe it's 1 or 2 second CC effect, which is going to bump up to 3 or 4 seconds. So you could technically have enemies, I think, webbed for about 8 seconds with this tier 2 upgrade, which is fantastic for especially Shadowlands. And then he's getting an 18% increase to all attack and defense of summoned characters. Now, if you didn't know, the Superior Spider-Man does have a summon. It's the Spiderlings. I went ahead and I upgraded it to level 6 to show you guys that it has 100% of his stats. So that's going to bump up 18%. So I think that bumps up to 118. I don't know if it stacks or if it's taken as a percentage of the final number. Hopefully it stacks because the other option is actually much, much worse. But it's not really going to make much of a difference. That byline is basically useless. This skill just gets rotated in when you have a chance, and it does, you know, decent damage. It's really, they're not summons. They're just like suicide bots, basically. And then he's getting a 20% increase to guaranteed dodge, which is not bad for survivability. And then he's also getting a bump to the 4-star passive mutagenic growth, which is exactly the same with the uniform. Overall, I do think that Superior Spider-Man's Tier 2 is far and away better than his ununiformed version, which is sad, because it's basically just saying if you want to play as Dr. Octopus, you have to get the uniform. So, I mean, it has been the case up until now that you have to get the uniform, because otherwise he's just absolute trash. But they've just further solidified this, which in my mind is just kind of a bad move. Kind of a dick move on Netmarble's part. And then the last one we are finally getting the Tin Man Destroyer. The original garbage recycling man is getting his Tier 2. He kind of looks like a punk rocker with this uniform on, but, you know, bad jokes aside. He's getting the Plasma Pulse uniform, or Tier 2 upgrade, excuse me. He's getting a 10% all speed increase, which is not bad. 25% increase to skill damage, 25% increase to bonus damage. He is not getting a 5th skill, as a lot of people speculated. And then he's going to get an enhanced effect of his skill, Odin's Enchantment, which decreases energy damage received by 50%. So all that's going to do is it's going to make Destroyer even tankier against the big energy damage hitters like Odin, Doctor Strange, Enchantress, Proxima, etc. And it's going to make his Asgardian armament even more potent, because he'll be able to take more damage, because he will be absorbing more and reflecting more, but actually taking less on his HP bar. And it'll just make him an even better, you know, source of reflect damage to counter and to troll high energy damage dealing characters like the ones I've named. So overall, a pretty good Tier 2 for Destroyer. It just makes him better at what he does. It doesn't make him any better as a standalone character. He's basically solidified his position as like a dangerous pylon, as a proximity mine. Get too close and you're toast, basically. He doesn't get any more useful at things like Shadowlands, you know, Alliance Battle, anything like that. Thank you for the Dimension Rift. And I just think it's a little bit, I don't know, it strikes me as a tad bit lazy, but they can't make all characters creative, so I understand that. On top of these Tier 2 updates, thankfully, we are getting reworks to 3 of the 5 characters that we have been talking about. So who are we getting reworks to? We're getting reworks to both versions of Dr. Octopus, as well as Jessica Jones. So if you're here for Kingpin, if you're here for Luke Cage, if you're here for Destroyer, sorry, they're not getting any love. Dr. Octopus without his uniform, so we're talking about the green man with the Stevie Wonder glasses. He's getting basically not an overhaul, but a boost or a buff to all of his skills. All of his skills are having their range increased, their damage increased. Some of them are getting knockback, or some of them are getting like a snare or a pull effect to like animation wise pull the enemies in. You can kind of think of it like Medusa's hair. I think they're going to pull some of the animation effects from the Medusa character that they recently introduced. They're going to increase the number of his buffs. So ununiformed Dr. Octopus with his 3rd skill, Tentacle Block, he buffs his physical defense. That pathetic 12% is going to jump up probably to like 40 or 50, because just having one type of defense in this game is really not that great. And he's going to have his base stats increased for Tier 1, which just shows you how bad of a place the character was in, that they actually have to increase the base stats. That's what they did to Elektra, guys. So you can kind of guess how far gone he was at the time. And they're going to add a guard hit to his Armed and Dangerous skill. So Dr. Octopus Classic Mode, his 5th skill here, Armed and Dangerous, is going to add a guard hit, kind of like Thor. I don't know how many hits or for how long, but we'll wait and see what that looks like. Then the Superior Spider-Man version is also getting a buff to most of his skills. Curiously, and actually much better, the web caught effect will actually now CC the opponent. It's going to have the web effect added. So I mentioned before that his Tier 2 for Superior Spider-Man is going to increase the web duration by 2 seconds. But now there are 2 skills that web for, you know, at least 3 seconds. So that's going to be a minimum of 6 seconds worth of webbing if you can chain the skills properly, up to maybe 8 seconds or even more if they last longer. And they're also going to be increasing his base stats at Tier 1, and they're going to be adding a full iframe during the skill animation of Arachnophobia, which is very, very good. And they're going to increase the range on From the Sky and damage for other skills. His skill Spiderlings will have an instant iframe when he's in the air, so that's another bump in his survivability. And overall, it just further solidifies the point that you need to get this uniform if you have any intention to play as Dr. Octopus. The last character that's getting buffs is Jessica Jones. She's not getting the buffs that she deserves, but it's better than nothing. They're fixing an issue where this skill doesn't hit. They're making the charge animation for this skill faster. They're increasing the range of this skill. They're increasing the range and immunity of this skill. So Powerhouse will act similarly to, I believe it's She-Hulk's third skill, where during this skill animation, she will be immune to all CC effects, including stun. So she basically can't be interrupted when she's using this skill unless the enemy does an iframe, which doesn't actually do much for her survivability. It just makes this skill a little bit more consistent in Shadowlands, where you get stunned pretty often. And then they're adding a partial iframe for this skill when she's in the air. If you don't know how this skill works, she's not actually in the air for the whole animation, so that's not very good. And they're adding a guard break, or they're changing the guard break to an actual stun, so she's getting a little bit of CC. Overall, I'm very deeply disappointed with the changes to Jessica Jones. It's nowhere near the level of love she needed, and given the fact that they upgraded Luke Cage way better than they did her, and Kingpin, and I would argue Dr. Octopus Superior Spider-Man, it's kind of a slap in the face, especially for an unfarmable character. I don't want to shit too much on this because I know a lot of people love Jessica Jones, and I think she's pretty cool, but I think they could have done a lot more for her, and if they had just been a little bit creative about it and a little bit true to the comics, they could have made everybody happy in this situation. Overall, I would say probably the best tier 2 that's coming up for us is probably either Destroyer or Kingpin, because they're going to get pushed closer to meta capable characters. Luke Cage is not far behind, and Superior Spider-Man Doc Ock is also not far behind. Sadly, I have to say that it's either original Doc Ock, classic green Doc Ock, or Jessica Jones that actually falls to the bottom of this tier 2 patch and character balancing patch. But as always, guys, I want to know what you guys think. I'm curious what you have in store for these characters, what you think they should have done differently, who you're going to tier 2 next. So let me know in the comments, guys. And also, I am going to be leaving in the description a link that you guys can follow to give a Facebook like for the event that Netmarble has been doing for the game. I guess if they get to 100,000 likes, we all get some special prize, and I guess it's been stalling at like 80,000 or 75,000 or something like that. A couple of people have hit me up to try to, you know, surge those numbers up, so I would appreciate it if you guys did go on there and vote and thumbs it up. I don't get anything out of it personally, it's just for the community, so I wanted to show love to you guys, and I wanted to bring attention to it in case some of you have missed that, because it is in its final days before they tally the numbers and decide whether we get the loot and the goodies or not. So if you want free shit, go to the Facebook page, give it a like, guys. And of course, if you like what you see, guys, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.